Every one of them fully trained and operational, ready to honour the Queen's official birthday by trooping the colour. And a very warm welcome to this Queen's Birthday Parade of 2005 on the 200th anniversary of this very popular tradition of trooping the colour in honour of the Sovereign's birthday. Now, keeping me company in the commentary box once again this year is Lieutenant Colonel Gerald Laginski, whose expertise would take some beating. Not only has he taken part in this parade as a guardsman, but he's also commanded the parade very successfully back in 1991. Gerald, it's a lovely day for it, isn't it?
It is a splendid day for it, Hugh. Dry, clear, not too hot, just a touch of breeze. It's the ideal sort of morning for the Sovereign's personal household troops to say happy birthday to their Colonel-in-Chief, and I'm really looking forward to it.
The bands are on their way, and very soon the principal players in today's parade, the number 1 company, 1st Battalion Irish Guards, will be on their way towards Horse Guards Parade. They'll be providing the escort because it's their colour that will be trooped down the ranks today. Wonderful sight. Her Majesty is expected here on Horse Guards before very long, along with other members of the royal family, of course, who'll be making their way down the Mall from Buckingham Palace, where Claire Balding is keeping an eye on things for us today.
Thanks, Hugh, and I feel remarkably privileged. One of the best views in the house. I'm standing in front of the magnificent facade of Buckingham Palace, built originally not for a sovereign but for the Duke of Buckingham in 1703. It was then bought by George III for his wife, Queen Charlotte. First monarch to actually live here was Queen Victoria, and as you can see, tourists, spectators and the mounted bands ready and assembled here. They will start from Buckingham Palace and head around the Queen Victoria Memorial. Now, when John Nash redesigned Buckingham Palace in about 1820, this entrance was actually Marble Arch, but it was moved up to the top of Park Lane to make way for this 82-foot white marble memorial built by Edward VII in memory of his mother, Queen Victoria. The parade will head down the Mall, not to be confused with Pall Mall, which runs parallel to it and was named after a game that Charles II used to play in St James's Park, Pell Mell, a form of croquet. One of many fascinating facts that you will enjoy with your coffee.
We're enjoying already, Claire, thank you very much. And so is the Prime Minister, Mrs Blair. Dr John Reid there, the new Defence Secretary, in his first Queen's Birthday Parade in that role. And as Gerald was saying, it's a very nice day for it. Not too warm, but some sunshine nonetheless and a light breeze. Lovely light here on Horse Guards Parade. The Irish Guards just taking their place. The scene is almost set for this trooping the colour. 6 guards now taking their place on the parade ground. Now, at the northern end of Horse Guards, at right angles, we can see them in front of the old Admiralty building. Number 6 Guard is found by number 7 Company Coldstream Guards. 25 of them taking part in their first birthday parade, and the Coldstream Regiment is the oldest corps in continuous existence in the British Army. Its men have served with great distinction in almost every British Army campaign. Now, next to them, at right angles, there they are along St James's Park, number 5 Guard, which is found today by F Company Scots Guards. And as we move along the line, number 4 Guard is found by Nijmegen Company of Grenadier Guards, and all except a handful of these men are taking part in their first birthday parade. 8 of them, by the way, have recently returned from duty in Iraq. Next to them is number 3 Guard, also found by Grenadiers today. This time the Queen's Company, 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards, who trooped their colour very stylishly here in Horse Guards 2 years ago. Now, number 2 Guard is found by number 4 Company, 1st Battalion Irish Guards. It's their big day today. The battalion is currently stationed at Wellington Barracks, a few hundred yards away from Horse Guards Parade, so not too long a journey for them. Which brings us, of course, to number 1 guard. The escort itself, also found by the 1st Battalion Irish Guards and the men of number 1 Company. And what a very proud day it is for them, for the Irish Guards. It's the best part of a decade since they provided the escort and trooped their colour to honour the Queen's official birthday. The man in charge of today's parade, Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Knaggs of the 1st Battalion Irish Guards, is due to arrive here very shortly. We'll have more to say about him a little later on, but he's been explaining their long absence from Horse Guards.
Irish Guards haven't trooped their colours since 1996, but we've been extremely busy since then. We moved out to Germany and we took on the Armoured Infantry role. From there we trained in Canada, Poland. We found ourselves the first troops going into Pristina, in Kosovo, and then in the early part of 2003 we found ourselves in Kuwait, ready to go forward to take part in the Iraq War.
The most recent deployment I was with was Kosovo. I was a platoon sergeant there. It was a bit of a culture shock because there was a lot of destruction there, not just from the NATO air raids but from what the Serbians had done. I can remember not seeing a single roof intact, every building was burnt out. So that was a bit of a shock to the system, and then a lot of the young lads were seeing dead bodies, wounded people for the first time, and there was still quite a bit of trouble going on between the Serbs withdrawing and the Albanians looking for retribution, and we were sort of stuck in the middle as usual, keeping people apart.
The big one was Iraq. Being in the Irish Guards, we served in the desert a number of different times before, so we obviously were used to the environment. But what we weren't used to is people shooting back at us. And in Iraq, we knew we were going to be in for, obviously, got to do the war fighting before we can actually go into the peacekeeping sort of thing. So it was exciting, to say the least. No 2 days was exactly the same there, but it was, some days were good, some days were bad.
For a lot of us, it was the best thing we've done since we joined the army, because it was proper soldiering. That's what it was all about. We enjoyed it.
When you look at a guardsman who's dressed up with his bearskin cap and his scarlet tunic, people tend to forget that behind there is a real soldier, and the point I'd make is we're soldiers first, and then ceremonial troops thereafter.
Spending so long on operational duties and coming back to doing ceremonial duties, if you haven't done it before, it's quite daunting. Haven't done ceremonial duties in the past, you sort of slip back into the role because it's what we're trained to do.
You can always draw on experience that you learn from operations. When we're in London, we do the same things that we do in operations, keep an eye on each other, make sure none of us are obviously suffering from any problems, and make sure the lads are obviously happy. Once the lads are happy, the battalion will flow nicely.
The first thing to do when you assemble that guard, be it the escort, number 2 guard, or the other regiments that form the other guards, is to start making the blokes feel that they belong to that. Right, you are in the escort, you know, it's an important job, we are doing this, and start tying them down. And once they feel team spirit forming there, there's more effort put in, and you produce the goods and dangle the carrot in front. Less time on a drill square if you get it right this time, fellas.
The last one I did was in '96, was the last Irish Guards one before we left to go to Germany. And I was only a young pup then, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
We lost 2 fine men out in Iraq, Corporal Ian Malone and Piper Christopher Mazuru. We'll be thinking of them. When we see those colours trooping past us today, we'll be thinking of those men. And for us, the colours are a living memorial to great sacrifices that this regiment has made over the years since we formed.
And a reminder for us all, facing Horse Guards, the Guards Memorial, erected in 1926 to remember those guardsmen lost in the First World War and in subsequent conflicts. The 2 Irish Guards mentioned there by Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Knaggs. There were 3 men lost by Household Cavalry, D Squadron, Blues and Royals, Lance Corporal Carl Shearer, Lieutenant Alexander Tweedy, Lance Corporal Matty Hull, and a man lost by the Coldstream Guards, Guardsman Anthony Wakefield. Gerald, looking ahead to this morning's parade, from your vantage point as someone who's been a guardsman and who's commanded the parade, which is, let's face it, a bit of an advantage when it comes to commentary. What's the test for these men today?
The test really, Hugh, is steadiness on parade. That's the foundation. And we want to see confidence and self-assurance and just that little touch of a swagger. We're going to see some teamwork. Each guardsman, trooper or gunner working with his comrades to produce the very highest standard of performance. That's what I hope we're going to see.
quite a few of the members of the audience here today mentioned to me before we started the broadcast, it's great when the Irish Guards are trooping the colour. What did they mean?
The Irish Guards, the mix, are a delightful bunch. They really are. They're positive and effective in a professional way, but also they've got a unique dash of flair, a sort of upbeat approach, which makes them a little bit different and that little bit special.
Are you saying you're going to enjoy yourself?
I'm looking forward to it enormously.
We all are. And I can certainly tell you that demand for tickets for this event has been, well, not unprecedented, because it's always, of course, very high, but there's not a seat, not a ticket left. And I have to say the rehearsals for this year's event have been very, very well attended too, which underlines the popularity, not just here in Horse Guards itself, but there are thousands of people in St James's Park and lining the Mall, ready for the colour and the pageantry and all the music. Now, the first royal guests are due to leave Buckingham Palace any moment now, so let's join Claire once again.
Thank you, Hugh. Bathed here in gorgeous sunshine in front of the Queen Victoria Memorial, and that's the view just inside the quadrangle awaiting the arrival of the first of the carriages. There are tourists here from Florida, from New York. I spoke to a couple who've flown over from South Africa especially for the Queen's birthday parade, also people from Japan, all over the world gathered to watch as this extraordinary event takes place, the 200th anniversary of the first Queen's, or first royal birthday parade, one should say. We've also got a very large gathering of press photographers, their lenses trained on this first carriage because it includes a member of the royal family who has never before taken part in trooping the colour. Over 230 horses take part in this parade, and their riders are very much at the whim of their behaviour. Now, the field officer's trumpeter is Lance Corporal Aaron Slowey, and you can hear the bugle in the background. He's only just returned to mounted duty. Applause rings out. The first two carriages come out of the main gates of Buckingham Palace and turn left around the Queen Victoria Memorial. And the photographers dashing past at the moment to get another vantage point, because facing forwards, closest to the inside, is the Duchess of Cornwall. It's the first time she's taken part in the parade, 9 weeks today since her wedding to the Prince of Wales. And also in that first carriage, Prince William, who got his degree results from St Andrews this morning, and also the Earl and Countess of Wessex. Everyone looking very relaxed and rather enjoying the weather. In the second carriage we have the Duke of York, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, and Rear Admiral Timothy Lawrence, husband of course of the Princess Royal.
Back on Horse Guards, the colour party is in place. And this is a nice story for us. 3 brothers in charge of the colour. The sergeant in charge of the colour is Michael Hogan. His brothers James Hogan and Peter Hogan are the guardsmen escorting the colour. And when the battalion served in Iraq, 3 brothers were all posted with different battle groups. So a very proud moment for the Hogan family. And today, colour, of course, being trooped is the Queen's colour of the 1st Battalion Irish Guards. And at the bottom of the list there of battle honours, there we see Iraq 2003. Now that's very significant because that battle honour was recently approved by Her Majesty. It was added literally in the last couple of days, and this is the only army unit whose Iraq battle honour has been announced, and it's been announced specially so that it can be shown on the parade today. So that's a nice thing, and a very significant for the men, Gerald.
It is. The colour is a very special thing altogether. I mean, it's really because it symbolises 2 things. One is the direct link to the sovereign, because this colour was personally presented by Her Majesty. And the second is the link to the generations, really, of guardsmen who've fought and died in the regiment in years gone by. So this continuity, this unbroken service and sacrifices, is represented in a very physical way by the colour on parade today.
The citation, by the way, for that battle honour reads as follows, that from the commencement of hostilities on the 19th of March 2003, the Irish Guards took part in the fighting to secure southern Basra and policed the subsequent peace until they were relieved on the 30th of April, and they were awarded an MBE and 3 military crosses for that campaign. Very proud day for the Irish Guards. We're approaching the time of the Queen's expected departure from Buckingham Palace, so let's join Claire once again.
Perfect timing, Hugh, because the royal carriage is now emerging. And this will hold Her Majesty the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, who celebrated his 84th birthday yesterday and is Colonel of the Grenadier Guards. And once again, the bugler plays a fanfare. Now these horses and carriages are going to have a busy week, because either tomorrow or on Monday they will head up to Yorkshire, where Royal Ascot is being staged from Tuesday through to Saturday. Ascot itself being rebuilt, so it's being held temporarily this year at Ascot. And the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh in a barouche, which is an elegant open carriage. It was in much use through the 19th century. And they look a little bit like old-fashioned perambulators, like a great big pram, being drawn by 2 grey horses. And riding alongside the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh are the Crown Equerries, Lieutenant Colonel Sir Malcolm Ross, and also Major Robinson, who will be in blue. That's him on the far side. And the parade heads off from the Queen Victoria Memorial, which was once referred to as the wedding cake, towards Horse Guards Parade, which I have heard affectionately referred to by the soldiers as the birthday cake. So from cake to cake.
And number 3 guard, as we can see, has opened up, and it's opened up to give admission to the first barouche, the first royal carriage, which will arrive very shortly with the Duchess of Cornwall and with Prince William and the Earl and Countess of Wessex. On its way, just about to arrive at the approach road here, which leads down to Horse Guards Parade on this gloriously sunny morning for this Queen's Birthday Parade of 2005. A warm welcome for the occupants of both carriages. Daughters of the Duke of York there, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, riding with their father, the Duke of York, and Rear Admiral Tim Lawrence, husband of the Princess Royal. She'll be riding to this parade because she's one of the Royal Colonels. As these carriages approach the Guards Memorial, we'll have the first royal salute. And I think it's fair to say that the occupants of both royal carriages, royal barouches, have the best seats in the house, apart, that is, of course, from our loyal viewers, because they'll be watching from the Duke of Wellington's old office above Horse Guards Arch. Horse Guards building, currently, of course, the headquarters of the London District and Household Division. The occupants of the carriages there saluting the colour, acknowledging the colour as they passed. Now it's a good time for us to have a closer look at the escort to the colour, because they have a very crucial role, of course, in today's parade. The captain of the escort is Major Dan Wilkinson, who served for some 12 years, including in Northern Ireland and in Iraq. The subaltern is Captain Patrick Lance, who's been an Irish guardsman for 6 years. He's also served in Northern Ireland and Iraq. And the ensign, he's the man with a very responsible job today, is Second Lieutenant Ben Pennington. He's the man who will troop the colour down the ranks. He'll carry the colour as it's trooped down the ranks today. He's a former teacher, he's 27, he's been in the Irish Guards for some 21 months. We'll have more to say about Second Lieutenant Ben Pennington a little later on. And the man in charge of today's parade is Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Knaggs, and he's the man who is answerable to the Queen for everything that happens here, which is quite a thought, isn't it? He's commanding officer of the 1st Battalion Irish Guards, or to give him his formal title today, Field Officer in Brigade Waiting. It's quite an onerous task, isn't it, Gerald?
It is indeed, Hugh. There's Charlie Knaggs, a man who has commanded his battalion in battle. He's faced shot and shell with distinction, but this is a different sort of challenge. A foot guards officer, so he's not a regular horseman. 180 odd different words of command to remember, but he's very professional, very effective, and I'm sure that he will enjoy himself immensely.
Well, he took command on St. Patrick's Day 2003, just 4 days before they crossed into Iraq. He's immensely proud, as Gerald was saying, of his regiment's traditions. Despite the fact that it was only formed in 1900, they have no fewer than 6 VCs among their honours, including the last VC awarded in Europe at the end of the Second World War. 20 years old in 1940, all Edward Charlton from Old Trafford wanted was to be an Irish guardsman. Shortly after D-Day, Guardsman Charlton crossed the Channel with the 2nd Battalion, passing through France, liberating Belgium, pushing on to German soil. He wrote to his mother, promising to take good care of himself. On the morning of the 21st of April 1945, his troop entered the Rhineland village of Wistedt. Attacked by a battalion of panzers, they were in danger of being overrun. Guardsman Charlton recovered the machine gun from his damaged tank and kept the enemy at bay, undeterred even by a shattered left arm, until finally overcome by his wounds. He died hours later, but his action saved several comrades. Like many brave men, he never had the chance to wear his medal, the last Victoria Cross awarded in Europe in the Second World War. What a magnificent sight. The royal procession on its way down the Mall. Very soon, Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh will arrive on Horse Guards Parade for this Queen's Birthday Parade of 2005. Queen and the Duke today riding in the ivory-mounted phaeton, as it's called. She first rode to the parade in 1986, and she's ridden in this carriage ever since. And it's the 3rd time that the Duke of Edinburgh has ridden in it with her. He celebrated his birthday yesterday, by the way. He was 84. Led by the stand-in brigade major, Lieutenant Colonel David Russell Parsons of the Grenadier Guards. He's standing in for Lieutenant Colonel Edward Malott, who's probably watching this from his hospital bed. We wish him well today. 4 troopers of the Life Guards and the mounted bands of the Household Cavalry leading the way with the 1st and 2nd Divisions of the Sovereign's Escort. The familiar drum horses there leading the mounted bands into Horse Guards. The mounted bands making their way to the left of our screen, where they'll wait for their grand entrance a little later in this parade, as will the Sovereign's Escort itself. Queen's coachman today is senior coachman Chris Lloyd, who's riding Daniel, an Irish grey gelding. The hand horse is Windhoek, who's an Hungarian grey gelding. Chris Lloyd recently succeeded Colin Henderson as the senior coachman. At this moment, it's worth reminding ourselves that the Queen has been taking the salute at this birthday parade for every single year of her reign, apart from one year, 1955, when a rail strike forced the cancellation of the event. But it's a remarkable record, and it's certainly unmatched by any other sovereign. Duke of Edinburgh here today, of course, is Royal Colonel of the Grenadier Guards. Took up his appointment in 1975. Queen and the Duke enter Horse Guards parade. The audience rises. Chris Lloyd, the senior coachman, will prepare to salute the colour himself, and he'll do so with his whip. It's a special form of salute as they pass the colour in a few moments' time. And the Royal Colonels will do likewise. The Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards, the Duke of Kent, Colonel of the Scots Guards, and the Princess Royal, Gold Stick in Waiting and Colonel of the Blues and Royals. Interesting to note at this stage, of course, that we're talking about celebrating the Queen's official birthday. Her real birthday is on the 21st of April, but this tradition of having an official birthday started with Edward VII, whose birthday was in November, and he didn't like battling with the awful weather which often happened in November, so he instigated this official birthday in lovely June, and I think that this was precisely the kind of weather that he was hoping for. And as the Queen and the Duke prepare to leave the carriage and to take their places on the saluting base, the field officer in brigade waiting, Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Knaggs, prepares to acknowledge her arrival. The standard, the Royal Standard, will be broken out, unless of course it's got stuck, which could be rather unfortunate. It's meant to be broken out anyway now that the Queen's arrived. And we're ready for the Royal Salute. Queen's first duty is to inspect the line, and the massed bands under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Chatburn of the Irish Guards, the Senior Director of Music, will play a slow march tribute to the Irish Guards, the Irish Folk Medley. Lieutenant Colonel Chatburn recently promoted because he's retiring from the army. He joined as a 15-year-old. We wish him well. He'll be greatly missed on these occasions. The Queen prepares now to inspect the line itself. Queen, as she always does, having a very, very close look. Gerald, for the benefit of viewers, what is she looking for precisely?
She's looking for a guardsman showing steadiness, fulfilling his tunic, really. Looking up, standing straight and tall and proud.
Very soon, the music will change to the Quick March. The Quick March will be the Irish Guards. Turn around number 6 guard. The Royal Colonels coming around with them, and among them is the Duke of Abercorn, His Grace the Duke of Abercorn, passing through the writer's screen at the moment, riding Thelavira for the first time. He was appointed Colonel of the Irish Guards in November 2000. He's the most senior aristocrat in Ireland, and it's a very proud moment for him today, Gerald.
Yes, bearing in mind it's been some time since the mix have trooped their colour. This is his first time as Colonel of the regiment, and I'm sure he's enjoying it.
As the procession passes around the back of the Guards, they will prepare to acknowledge the Sovereign Standard held by the standard bearer of the Sovereign's escort. Coachman salutes. And the Royal Colonels do likewise. Then the other colonels do, including the Duke of Abercorn. They pass the Guards Memorial and then they salute the guns, the lead guns of the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, who will make a very exciting entry later in this parade. Guns, of course, are in effect the colours of the King's Troop. procession makes its way back. That's Sir Malcolm Ross, the Lord Chamberlain at Buckingham Palace, who's in charge of so many of these high-profile, important state events. They're making their way back to the saluting base. Among the procession too is Major General Sebastian Roberts. He's the Major General commanding the Household Division, which is based here at Horse Guards. And his son, by the way, is also on parade today, 2nd Lieutenant Julian Roberts. He's subaltern of number 2 Guard, found by number 4 Company, 1st Battalion Irish Guards. So it's a very nice day for Major General Sebastian Roberts, but he's not the only example of a father and son on parade. We have the Duke of Edinburgh, the Prince of Wales, and we have a few other examples too. Now we're approaching the moment which, I have to say, judging by all the letters you sent us last year, which we're very grateful for, you all enjoy very much. It's the troop itself. It's a musical treat. It's when the massed bands, the drums, march forward. It's a slow march for the troop, and it starts off with that very familiar piece of music at Trooping the Colour, which is Les Huguenots by Meyerbeer, but the tune in its current form was devised by Dan Godfrey, bandmaster of the Grenadiers from 1856 to 1896. The senior drum major in the Household Division, Colour Sergeant Dean Colbert, gives the order to troop. On the front rank for the raised trombone to signal a turn of direction for the massed bands. signal, staff held aloft to stop the slow march and move to the quick.
March by the center. Quick march.
Quick March is St. Patrick's March by Thomas Bidgood. And as the Quick March moves on, the drummer breaks away from the massed band, marches to a position 2 paces to the right of the escort. This is Lance Sergeant Russell Smith. He served for 17 years. This is his 11th Queen's Birthday Parade, and this signals for us the next big phase of the parade. We're preparing for the moment when the colour is trooped down the ranks. Lance Sergeant Russell Smith, by the way, has served on operations in Kosovo, in Northern Ireland and Iraq, and I have it on good authority that he's one of the very best buglers in the Guards Division. Lance Sergeant Russell Smith beats the drummer's call. The moment for the orderly to take his place on the parade ground, to take the pace stick from the Sergeant Major. It's only time for the Sergeant Major to draw his sword on the parade ground, and this takes us into the most significant part of the parade as the escort prepares to troop the colour.
Escort for the colour and close order. Left, just.
And the famous eyes front, which takes place remarkably with no word of command.
Escort for the colour will advance by the left. Quick march.
And to the rousing tune of the British Grenadiers, the escort moves off with a flourish. Gerald, this is indeed the proud moment arrived.
It's very proud indeed. This is the escort, the right flank company of the battalion, showing itself off, going forward for the first time for many years, and the Guardsmen will be feeling an extra 6 inches taller as they go forward to this ancient and well-known tune.
The escort marks time, waiting for the massed bands to march to a different point on the parade ground, allowing the escort a clear view of the colour party, clear view of the colour which will be trooped down the ranks by the Irish Guards today. The escort advances. Soon the music will cut out, some 20 paces from the colour party, brings us to the next phase of the parade.
Escort for the colour and over order. Right! Yes! Guard! Turn! Turn! Come! No! Come!
And a very special moment now for the Regimental Sergeant Major, Warrant Officer First Class Simon Nichols, telling me that this was an extremely proud moment for him, because after this he's going to Sandhurst to become the Academy Sergeant Major, most prestigious warrant officer's post in the British Army. So this is the culmination of a wonderful day for him and a very special point in his career as he prepares to take possession of the colour and transfer it to the ensign. The ensign, Ben Pennington, having saluted the colour, takes possession of it, ready for the trooping.
Escort to the colour!
So the escort 4 has become the escort to the colour, to maximise protection. 4 NCOs turn outwards there and port arms, ready for the royal salute.
Escort to the colour! Slow! Out!
So the colour party joins the escort itself. And before the trooping can begin, we need some rearranging on the parade ground, not least by the massed bands. because they're facing the wrong way, to put it gently, and they have to turn in another direction within a very confined space. So we're about to see what has been described as the most professional display of organised chaos anywhere in the world.
Ascot to the colour! We're advanced! By the centre! Slow! March!
When I talked about that professional display of organised chaos, this is what I meant. It's what we call the spin wheel, which is executed to change direction. Having seen this several times now, I still don't quite understand, Gerald, how it's done.
And nor do I here. It's all smoke and mirrors as far as I'm concerned. As a foot guardsman, I can't work out what these musicians do. Apparently, the tradition is that the intricacies are passed down by word of mouth from senior musician to the more junior ones, and they and the Garrison Sergeant Major are the only people in the world who know how to achieve this extraordinary configuration.
Well, there's the result. They may say it's chaos, but it's a perfect result. Facing the other way, marching to the south end of this parade ground on horse cars. The escort is advancing in slow time towards number 6 guard, and every guardsman is now aware of the historical significance of the trooping that's about to take place. Ben Pennington, the ensign, told me he was nervous but ready for this moment.
The feelings of doing it on the day is obviously one of enormous excitement and honour being the ensign to the colour. But there's also building that apprehension about what can go wrong. But given the fact we've been rehearsing now for 6 weeks, you've got to hope that on the day it's all going to be fine. I'll be very nervous probably coming out to the Queen, especially I think it's to look right, of course. Everyone else gets to look right and see if she's happy or not. I have to keep facing forward, but obviously I'll just be trying to get it right.
And we wish him luck today. The band will soon cut out, signalling the start of the trooping itself.
God! Reason! Hand!
They salute the colour as the band resumes playing the Grenadiers' slow march. And the trooping begins. A little of the history for you, for those of you who are not familiar. In days gone by, to ensure that the men would recognise their unit's flag immediately, it became the practice to carry the colours down the ranks at the end of a day's march and to escort them to the billet where they'd be lodged for the night. And the parade was originally known as lodging the colour for that purpose. Detail very similar to the trooping ceremony that we're enjoying today. Gerald, at this precise moment, given that you've commanded and that you've been there as a guardsman, what are the feelings at this moment?
If you're in part of the escort, it's a good feeling because you're on the move and you're trooping your colour through the ranks of the other regiments. If for the rest of the parade, I have to confess, is a long present arms. The Field Officer Brigade waiting gave the order to present at the beginning of this movement, and the weapon has to be held in front of the body right the way through until the escort resumes its position back on the right of line. So it's a long haul for the remainder of the parade.
As the trooping continues, it reminds me of one point raised by one of our correspondents last year, Gerald, asking you to say a little more about the reverence with which the colour is regarded.
Reverence is the word. The colour, whenever it comes on parade or is marched off parade, is greeted with a present arms. And I remember joining the 2nd Battalion of the Grenadiers back in the late 60s and arriving in the battalion as the colour was being marched off parade, and I knew no better and found myself very quickly in close arrest in the guard room for not standing to attention as the colour was being marched off parade.
Well, we're glad you're out in here today. Trooping entering its final phase. Ben Pennington, the ensign, doing a good job, Gerald.
He's doing very well indeed, actually. He must be quite a fit young man, because to hold the position he's in for as long as he has requires him to be really on the ball, and I have to confess I'm quite impressed.
What we now have is a series of orders to signal the next phase. The march past the saluting base when the Queen will take the salute.
God! Stop! Hand! Officers! Take post! Take post!
The officers take post and the colour is moved to the rear of the escort, ready for the march past to begin.
Number 1, top five guard will retire about turn. At the halt, right form, quick march.
Corps of drums, play Hazelmere, which is arranged by Burkitt. The guards reform, ready for this march past, in slow time first of all. Duke of York enjoying the parade, as I'm sure everyone else is this morning.
Number 1, top five guard will advance about turn.
And then a special order for number 6 guard.
Number 6 guard Order! March! Move! To the right and right! Come fast! Right!
All of that necessary, of course, to bring number 6 guard into line with the other 5 guards.
Fast and slow and quick time. By the left. Slow. March.
Mass bands get ready with the neutral slow march, O Carolan's concerto. Neutral in the sense that it's not tribal, it's not particularly pertaining to any regiment, it's a neutral slow march. Seems a good moment now, Gerald, as we look at this wonderful site, to talk about the intense hard work, the training that goes into today. Give us a flavour of that.
A lot of work does go into it. Having said that, the old warriors in the audience, and I've seen quite a few wearing the blue, red, blue Guards tie, they will recall having had months of preparation time for this sort of parade. But nowadays, with the number of commitments that the men on parade have got, it's quite remarkable to me how they can produce such a high standard on a relatively small amount of rehearsal. For example, it's only twice that they've been able to have all the men on parade together to rehearse. One of the reasons for that is that there's nowhere where they can rehearse. No barracks square in London is big enough to get this lot on, and so it's only on Horse Guards parade itself, twice over the last 2 weeks, that they've been able to come together and to rehearse.
So how realistic and how useful are all the practice sessions they have on smaller parade grounds?
They're all right for the bits and pieces, the nuts and bolts, but putting the whole thing together, choreographing the whole thing, can only be done here, and only 2 occasions on which they can do it.
Again, last year, lots of you wrote to us asking about the wet patches on Horse Guards parade. Gerald, it's worth a word, isn't it? Because the surface can be a blessing and a curse.
That's true. I mean, although the Horse Guards parade has been used for this parade for many years, if you were starting with a blank sheet of paper, you wouldn't design a surface like this for men to march on. Because of the cavalry and the artillery horses, it has to be gravelled. But the difficulty for the foot guards comes from the fact that the surface is so uneven. From up here it looks lovely and flat, but it's not, and you can see from some of the darker patches how it does undulate. So it's very difficult to march on this gravel and keep in line and coordinate drill movements. In fact, actually, it's fiendishly difficult.
Well, Gerald, I'm going to let viewers into a secret, because the Irish Guards invited me, brave men that they are, to join them as they trained for this parade. I was even persuaded, believe it or not, to wear a bearskin and carry a rifle for a slow and quick march, just to see what it was like. I should thank Corporal Marshall from Liverpool for being such a very patient coach. But the most important lesson I learned, Gerald, was just how much you depend on the man next to you making the right move. It's all about teamwork.
Absolutely that. And you will, I'm sure, have come across the fact that on rehearsals anyway, there's quite a lot of talking through going on in the ranks to make sure that the younger and less experienced guardsmen benefit from the experience of their seniors.
It certainly is. Number 3 Guard, passing along the south side of the parade ground, the Queen's Company 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards. Queen's Company is the Sovereign's Company. Its title changes to reflect the ruling sovereign, to whom it's closely associated. And in the last 100 years, it's been the tradition that all the soldiers are a minimum of 6 feet tall. The average height this year is 6'1". Guards make their way along to the corner, ready for the slow march past when the Queen will acknowledge the colour. The music will change relatively soon to the Irish Guards' slow march, Let Erin Remember, for the first 2 Guards, of course, numbers 1 and 2, the escort and number 2 Guard. She acknowledges. The music has now changed to Let Erin Remember, the Irish Guards Slow March. And the ensign, Ben Pennington, prepares to salute. The flourish, as it's known. Salute from the Duke of Edinburgh. The recover, as is known when the colour is raised again. Soon the music will change, the next set of guards. Scipio by Handel, slow march for the Grenadier Guards. Changes again for the Scots Guards, the slow march, the garb of Old Gaul. Duchess of Cornwall enjoying the sight today. Coldstream Guards about to pass the saluting base. Their slow march, Figaro, a Mozart arranged by Pope. And after them, the adjutant of the parade, Captain Alex Turner, will pass the saluting base. Officer, Brigade Waiting, Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Knaggs, prepares to tell Her Majesty that the slow march has been complete. His special salute with the sword. The neutral slow march is the Dover Castle by Carter as we prepare for the quick march. Field Officer riding Burniston today, a 12-year-old bay, who's said to be an excellent performer at these events. Watching it all from a wonderful vantage point, the Grand Old Duke of York, Frederick, Duke of York, the second son of George III. The statue and column there in St James's, 124 foot tall, said by some wags to be high enough to keep the Duke away from his creditors. Keeping a stern eye on Trafalgar Square in this 200th anniversary year of the Battle of Trafalgar, Lord Nelson, just behind the old Admiralty building on the northern flank of Horse Guards Parade. The old Admiralty building which is still used by the Navy Board, the boardroom at least, but most of that building is now taken up by the travel unit of the Foreign Office. And to the left of the screen there we can see the Citadel, which is a bomb-proof extension of the Admiralty built in the Second World War, which is always used on these days as an excellent and much sought-after vantage point for this parade. What a lovely sight. Big Ben in the background and the big wheel just to the left as we overlook the parade here, and numbers 10 and 11 Downing Street backing onto the parade ground with the Scottish Office just to the left, Dover House, and the Foreign Office over to the right.
Time! Pack march!
As we prepare for the march past in quick time, it's a very poignant moment for many of the Irish Guards as the pipers move forward. Pipe Major, Pipe Sergeant, wearing the Basra star today, which was bought by donations in the Corporal's Mess in memory of the two pipers killed in Basra, presented to him by Lance Corporal Malone's mother on St. Patrick's Day last year. The neutral quick march is Sons of the Brave by Thomas Pitgood. And as they get ready for the quick march, Gerald, it's a time to stretch their legs, isn't it? Is it a good moment?
It's a splendid moment, this, where you can step out and swing the arm. I mean, you can feel it yourself, I'm sure, Hugh. Music like this, it makes you want to march.
Quick march begins. Very soon we'll have the Irish Guards Quick March, St. Patrick's Day. There we are. changes to the quick march of the Grenadier Guards, the British Grenadiers. Another change, the Scots Guards, quick march, heel and laddie. Finally, Coldstream Guards, quick march, Millenolo by Van Ham. Officer prepares once again to report to Her Majesty. The neutral march, neutral quick march, is Slattery's Mounted Foot by Percy French. One or two of you wrote to us before today's parade asking about the Irish Guards mascot. Much loved Irish Wolfhound, Donnoch. Well, unfortunately, Donnoch is no longer with us, and the Irish Guards are now looking ready to train a new mascot for parades in future. Lots of wonderful traditions, of course, Gerald, associated with the Irish Guards, not least the shamrock tradition, which was associated with the Queen Mother, and of course, I'm also told, rather gently by one or two of them, that they've got a fairly rich beer tradition too.
Yes, I think that they would do well if there was a European Championships in that particular subject, yes.
Officers! Take post! Take march! Attention! Open order! Left and right! Start! First point! Moving to the right! Right! Turn! By the left! Kick march!
Drums and pipes play Al Basra, which is a march for drums and pipes composed by Rod Allen, the pipe major of the Irish Guards, in 2002. Very proud of the fact that it's being played today, understandably. As the massed bands perform another complex spin wheel, they make way on this parade ground for the mounted bands. What a wonderful sight they are. Claire Balding has joined us in the commentary box. Claire, this is always a great moment, isn't it?
I love it when the horses join in. They've been standing patiently for nearly 2 hours in the heat, and we've seen tossing heads and swishing tails as they just flick away the flies. But generally speaking, they've been remarkably well behaved, and I think my favourite horses in the whole parade are the two drum horses. We've got Spartacus and Constantine, whose stable name is Eric. And they're both absolutely enormous. Those kettle drums are solid silver. Look very closely, you'll see that the riders of the drum horses are actually steering with their feet, and this is the King's Troop moving forward. You'll see varying degrees of horsemanship today, but I would suggest that the King's Troop are the most capable riders of the lot. Because they request to join the King's Troop and to work with horses, most of them have ridden before, whereas the Household Cavalry, only 1 in 20 of the soldiers who join the Household Cavalry have ever sat on a horse, so it's a very quick learning process for them, whereas these guys have ridden for a long time.
They were known as the Riding Troop. The name was changed to the King's Troop by George VI in 1947. And on the Queen's accession, she ordered that the title King's Troop be retained in her father's memory. We said earlier that the lead gun is treated as the colour of the troop. The guns seen on parade today saw service in the First World War, and there are only 25 such guns in existence today worldwide.
And they're incredibly heavy, Hugh. They're 1.5 tons. And with the team as well of 6 horses pulling each gun, the whole length of it is about 54 feet long, and it's an amazing sight. 3 horses on the near side, on the left as you're behind the horse. The left side is always the near side. Those 3 are ridden, and the 3 on the off side are held in hand.
Commanding officer of the King's Troop, Major Anthony Brumwell.
And he's riding Bob Spangles. Now, all the officers' horses' names in the King's Troop come from Handley Cross or Mr. Jorrock's Hunt, which is a humorous novel by the 19th century sporting journalist Robert Surtees. The Queen watching very closely, a keen horsewoman herself, and will notice any moves that are out of step, any horses that are misbehaving. It's quite amusing, actually. There is something called the Empty Saddle Club, which is a club composed of officers who have had the misfortune to dismount involuntarily, in other words, fall off.
I don't think Gerald was one of those.
Narrowly avoided it, Hugh.
I tell you another person who narrowly avoided it. In 1932, the Duke of Gloucester almost joined the club. His charger didn't like the noise and nearly threw the Duke, but he managed to restore order and left the parade to get a better behaved horse.
The Queen prepares to acknowledge the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals. The Life Guards, the senior regiment in the British Army, not the oldest, but the senior regiment, formed in 1660. Recently, the Lifeguards have served in Northern Ireland, they've served with the UN in Cyprus, and they've served in the Gulf War of the early 90s and in Bosnia.
If you have a look at the armour that they're wearing and also their boots, the jack boots that they're wearing, are highly polished thigh boots. They're incredibly uncomfortable as well.
Lifeguards to be followed by the Blues and Royals. Their colonel is the Princess Royal. And were the Royal Dragoons until the amalgamation, the oldest cavalry regiment, raised by King Charles II in 1661.
And the term dragoon is derived from the word dragon, which was the name for a musket suitable for mounted infantry. The Princess Royal there, very accomplished horsewoman, rode at Badminton. Good 3-day eventer, and her daughter Zara Phillips following in her footsteps. Was second at Burghley a couple of years ago, only just beaten by Pippa Funnell.
And their glinting axes, the farriers, the rear there, a reminder of the day when injured horses had to be dealt with rather brutally. Or maybe kindly, Claire, at the end of a horrendous battle.
Yes, if they were wounded beyond repair, that spike, I'm afraid, was driven through their heads. It is incredibly gruesome, and the axe then used to cut off a hoof to keep a record of the horses that were lost.
Trumpeter of the Lifeguards signals the start of the trot.
Now this has varying degrees of comfort because it is meant to be performed in sitting trot. Not always the easiest thing to do.
The neutral trot first, Pariser Einzugsmarsch by Johann Bach. Before we have the regimental trot for both the King's Troop and the Household Cavalry, the Kiel Road.
And it's quite important to get the pace of this trot right, because the comfort of the rider is one thing, but the comfort of the horse as well. It's quite difficult to trot slowly. And as we've seen in past practices, you can end up going far too slow, and then the horses start misbehaving and everybody gets left behind and it becomes chaos.
We're seeing the familiar clouds of dust, Gerald, but it's not as dusty as it can be.
No, bearing in mind that the foot guards have been marching around and now standing at the present while the guns and the standard of the House of Cavalry go by. A lungful of dust at this stage is not necessarily a welcome thing.
Lifeguards, the Blues and Royals, their trot, and after the farriers have passed the saluting base with the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh once again, we'll then see the mounted bands move forward to give their salute to Her Majesty.
And you can see that the colours of the horses in the Household Cavalry are very strictly kept to almost black. Whereas in the King's Troop, they can be light bay, they can be chestnut, black or brown, but never grey horses in the King's Troop.
Mounted bands led by their Director of Music, Major David Cresswell.
Head left wheel! Head!
And soon we'll see the kettle drummers saluting in their special way by crossing their sticks.
And if you look down there, you can see the reins being attached from the bit to the drummer's feet. And that's what he's controlling the pace with, and also turning Constantine and Spartacus.
Soon the mounted band would halt. Director of music will turn to signal to the field officer that they're back in position, and we can have the final royal salute for today.
And I think we can safely say that the riding bit has almost been accomplished without any new members of the Empty Saddle Club.
Royal salute! Present! Come!
Colour lowered for the final royal salute, the only time that the colour touches the ground during this parade.
Hand! And south order! Left and right! Guard!
Famous eyes front again, rippling down the entire rank. No word of command given.
God! Welcome! Three ranks! Form! Three ranks! God will retire. About turn. At the halt by division. Right form. Cut forward.
Quick march. Music is The Adjutant by Tom Burkitt.
Could you see Burneston's lips going there as if he was giving the commands himself?
Division will advance. About turn. Guard on the escort. Form close column. Remainder. Quick march.
Guards preparing for these final manoeuvres as the corps of drums play Prussian Glory by Gottfried Piefke.
And you can see what a wonderful venue Horse Guards Parade is for a procession such as this. And in terms of the Olympic bid for 2012, this has been designated as the venue for the beach volleyball, which might have a rather different crowd and a rather different atmosphere.
Guard! Guard! Guard!
Sovereign's escort prepares to leave up the approach road towards the Mall. And we have a series of orders now to end this Queen's Birthday Parade of 2005.
Guard! Hold up! Hold! Stand down! Hold!
And moving to his position, Garrison Sergeant Major Bill Mott, his third birthday parade as Garrison Sergeant Major, but he's taken part in 9 in all. He's the eldest of 3 brothers serving in the Welsh Guards, and his job now is to take up his position at the corner of this parade ground, just across the approach road, at the edge of St James's Park, and give the signal to the field officer in brigade waiting that everything is ready for Her Majesty's departure. In the meantime, the other royal guests are already on their way back to Buckingham Palace. Field officer tells Her Majesty, "Your Majesty's Guards are ready to march off, ma'am," and she acknowledges that. Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Knaggs takes up his position at the end of the centre carriageway here on Horse Guards, ready for the Queen's departure. Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh now back in the ivory-mounted phaeton for their journey back to Buckingham Palace, where a little later on there'll be the traditional fly past by the RAF. But before that, Gerald, there's the small matter of considering how today has gone, because once Her Majesty's got her umbrella out of the way very neatly, she'll be on her way, and there does follow then that little moment where the field officer has the opportunity, once the signal from Bill Mott, the Garrison Sergeant Major, is received, the opportunity to maybe share a few words with the field officer about the success or otherwise of this parade. And before we talk a little bit about that, Gerald, maybe I should put you on the spot and say, what is your view of it so far?
Well, I'm not as expert as Her Majesty, but I must admit that we've had some splendid sights, some splendid sounds, and a great deal of hard work. A 200-year-old tradition has been upheld by the mix in splendid style, so I think they can be justifiably proud of their performance. And when you think that the escort now is going to Buckingham Palace to mount the Queen's Guard for 24 hours of sentry duty, I think they've done jolly well.
of Edinburgh now on their way, and Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Knaggs, the field officer, riding just behind the royal carriage on the left. For everyone who's come to St James's Park Horse Guards today, a real treat. Lots of young people in the park, behind the fencing we can see in the background there, enjoying the music and the spectacle. And Claire, what are your thoughts as we near the end of this transmission?
Well, I battled through those crowds to get from Buckingham Palace to Horse Guards and couldn't get over the range of ages, the different accents, the different languages that I heard as I came through, and it really is a huge draw for tourists and for British people as well, and they just love the sight of it, and it's gone very well.
And as Her Majesty makes her way back to Buckingham Palace, we can reflect on, yes, another very successful birthday parade. A great credit to the Irish Guards, well worth almost a decade's wait for them to troop the colour once again. So the royal party makes its way down towards the Mall, ready for that traditional flight past by the RAF. But for now, my thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Gerald Legynski and to Claire Balding for their expert views. From all of us at Horse Guards, thanks for watching and goodbye.